In this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you how I got a band 8.5 in my IELTS test. Hi there, welcome back to my channel. And if it's your first time here, my name is Dr. Deborah, and I film about my journey to becoming a doctor. And in this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you how I got a band 8.5 in my IELTS test. So I recently passed my PLAB 1 and my PLAB 2 exam, which is the licensing exam required in order to be a doctor in the UK. And in order to be able to qualify for the exam, I needed to have written an English exam. So I opted for the IELTS exam. There is an option for the OET as well, but in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the IELTS test. So IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System, and there are so many types. We have the general training, we have the academic, we have UKVI, but in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the general training and also the IELTS Academy, because those are the ones I actually did. When I did the IELTS Academic, I got band 8.5 in my listening and also in my reading, and an overall band of 8.0. And while I did the general training, I got a band 9 in my reading and I got 8.5 in my listening and an overall band of 8.5. So in this video, I'm just going to be sharing my strategies on what worked for me and how you can do it as well. I'm going to start by preparation time. How long you prepare for the exam depends on your individual circumstances. In my case, it took me around about 10 days, but that was actually spaced out in a duration of about a month. So the first step you need to know to get good band scores in your IELTS test is to know the structure of the exam. So this is an English exam and it has like 4 parts. It has the listening, the reading, the writing, and the speaking. The listening has 40 questions and it is done over a space of 30 minutes. The reading has 40 questions as well, done in a space of 1 hour. The writing has 2 tasks, done in a space of 1 hour. And the speaking has 3 parts and is done in a space of 15 minutes. So the entire exam is about 2 hours, 45 minutes. Like I mentioned earlier, I took the general training and also the academic, and I also took both computer-based and paper-based. So I'll be talking much about that later. So if you're interested in knowing the differences between those two, make sure you stick around. So the major difference between the academic IELTS and the general training IELTS is the reading and the writing. So the speaking part and the listening part are the same thing. So for the reading part, in IELTS Academic, you have more of academic terms, basically, and in general training, you have more of general words. It's basically self-explanatory. But moving on to the writing part, for academic IELTS, you have more of interpretation of bar charts, graphs, basically interpretation of data in different forms. It could also be in form of pie charts or tables. But in the general training, you have writing a letter. So you could be asked to write a formal letter, an informal letter, or a semi-formal letter. Then the part 2 is like writing a long essay. It's kind of similar for both general training and academic. So the listening part has different question types. So we have fill in the gaps, multiple choices, matching questions, sentence summary, maps, plans, diagrams. So there are various types of sentence structures, and it will really be helpful to familiarize yourself with the different types of structures. Finally, the speaking section has 3 parts, like I mentioned earlier. So the first part is more like introduction about where you live, your name, where you work, things like that. Then the second part, you'll be given a sheet of paper to talk about a particular topic, and you have to talk about it for like 2 to 3 minutes. Then the third part to be more like a follow-up question on the second part. So that's it for the format of the examination. The next thing you need to know about this exam is how the exam is marked, so you can know how to prepare for it and what to focus on. So there are different tables for different sections of the exam that the examination body has put out there for candidates who want to write the exam. So I'll put the link in the description box so you can be able to have a look at it and see what is actually required of you in this examination. Now you know the structure, now you know what is expected of you. The next thing is what materials you need. And I'm going to be talking based on my perspective. So initially when I studied, I used solely YouTube material. So like that's watching videos on YouTube. And there were 3 main channels I used. So I used IELTS Liz, Fastrack IELTS, and I used E2 IELTS. So basically everyone I used were really helpful. And the thing about them is that they really go deep into different categories, like every detail you think you might need, someone has covered it. So it's just about searching, here on YouTube, and you are definitely going to find what you are looking for. And another material I used in terms of getting sample papers, reading samples, listening samples I could actually practice was IELTS Up. So I'm going to leave the link in the description below as well. If you actually register with British Council, you are entitled to getting some sample materials that you can use to get yourself prepared for the exam. And they also simulate the computer-based format, so you are not new to it when you actually go into the examination hall. It was really helpful. So you just check your emails, there will be the material somewhere. There's also an option of paying to get more because they give you about 2 or 3 samples of each categories. But if you want to get more, then you can pay. I personally did not do that, but if you can afford it, I mean, why not? They are great materials as well. I also use like a physical book, and I use this book right here. It's called Barron, and the book was really helpful. Like, it gives you step-by-step guide. Like, you actually have practice questions. Okay, so now to the strategies that actually worked for me. So the first strategy I used was practice, practice, practice. So after getting the structure of the exam, understanding what is needed for me, I decided to lay my hands on past questions, like sample questions that have been done over the years, listening, reading, writing, speaking, all the categories. I feel like if you are able to lay your hands on past questions, you're answering the questions, knowing where your flaws are, knowing what is expected of you, and you are learning every single time you answer a new question. And I would say the exam is more of how well you're able to use your time. So it's how fast you're able to think on your toes and how fast you're able to manage your time and communicate effectively in English language. So I made sure I practice at least one of each category, like one listening paper, one speaking, one writing, and one reading in a day. And I practice with time. So that way my brain got used to working with the time. And if you watch these videos I recommended, like these IELTS channels, you would see that they have different strategies on how you can actually be faster and how to not waste time on irrelevant things. So I discovered while I was practicing that the listening part was the easiest for me. So I kind of paid less attention to it and focused more on where I had more challenges, and that was the writing part and the speaking part as well. And I feel like these two parts are kind of dicey because they are really subjective. Like for the listening and the reading part, you have a question, you have an answer. It's either right or it's wrong. But like the listening and the speaking goes through humans and they have to analyze it. So it's kind of subjective and it depends on the examiner you meet. So you really have to work towards being able to give them what they want in terms of what the examination actually requires of you. So what I did for the listening part was basically practice, to be honest. The recording is not repeated more than once, so you only hear it once. They usually have like a period where they will say have some time to look at the question. When they say that, make sure you are looking at the question and don't dwell on whenever you made a past mistake. If you feel like you are not seeing the answer again, just try to look for the next question. You might have missed the previous answer. Knowing how to really be fast paced and knowing when you miss the question and how to get back on track is very important, because once you lose track, it's very easy to like get everything wrong because you don't know where you are at that point. For the speaking, it would really be nice if you have someone around you that can maybe ask you the questions and you talk, and basically improving your communication skills, because sometimes you feel like, oh, I know how to talk, but when you get there it feels so tense. It's nice to have someone face to face, but if you can't get that as well, you can always improvise. So while I was practicing, I didn't really have people around me, so what I did was I would have a list of the questions that I probably would be asked. Then I would record my answers into my voice note and I would listen. So that would give me an idea, okay, I think I can do this better. So it's more like self-evaluation, and at the end of the day, it's actually paid off. And I also had some people I practiced with at some point. Now, moving on to the writing part, this is the part that people usually get like lower scores compared to the rest, at least from what I've heard and also in my own experience. So I got the lowest score in my writing in both of the exams. So I'm going to tell you what I did that was able to improve my score from 7.0 to 7.5 in the next examination I did. The first examination I did, I was basically getting questions and like practicing. You get like a sample answer, so you can know what is kind of expected of you, and definitely no two people's answer is going to be the same because we all think differently and our creative process are different. But the major thing they want to know is how can you use English language to write, not necessarily what are you writing. So it to be in terms of the grammar, the structure, the vocabularies. I'm quite aware that a lot of people believe you need to have like all the massive vocabularies before you can pass this exam. I don't think I really added so much vocabulary and I was able to get this much scores. But if you can add them, that's fine. But you don't want to be using like really bogus words you don't understand and you expect the examiner to understand. It's better to stick to what you know and what you can easily communicate. One thing I did differently the second time I wanted to take the exam was to send out my writing to a professional IELTS tutor to be able to give me feedback, because I was just wondering what exactly I was doing wrong. And when I was able to send my writings over to them, they were able to correct the part I was not doing right. They were mostly like punctuations, and like everybody has different areas of strength and weaknesses, so it will be different for different people. But if you can afford like somebody having your writing checked, it might even be your friend, someone who is better at speaking English than you. They might notice some things that you are not noticing. If you can afford the services of people who are actually professionally trained, that would also be nice, because that was like the only thing I did differently and it really showed in my score, and I was able to get a higher band score. Now to the differences between the computer-based and the paper-based exam. So I'm going to be talking about the advantages and the disadvantages of both sides. So for the computer-based exam, one of the advantages is that you get to see your results on time. So if you are in a hurry, maybe you want to get a visa quickly, you want to apply for a program like immediately, and you can't wait like a long period of time, then your best bet is to go for the computer-based exam. Another pro of doing the computer-based test is that for the writing part, you don't have to go through the stress of actually counting those words by yourself. Like the computer counts it for you. So I think that's just really a lifesaver. Another advantage is when you are in the reading section, like you can literally drag and drop your answers. So like it just saves way more time than having to write down any answer, because you risk having spelling mistakes. The disadvantage of using the computer based, in my own opinion, is you don't get extra time in your listening to be able to transfer your answer from your question paper to your answer paper. You just do it on the go. And if you're not a fast typer, this might really be challenging. Like if you're not someone that is used to typing a lot on the computer, you might want to go for the paper-based test. So that brings me to the advantage of the paper-based test. So like I mentioned, for the computer-based, you don't get extra time to transfer your answers in your listening. But for the paper-based, you have like extra 10 minutes to transfer your answer from the question paper to your answer sheets. And if you're someone that is really used to like pen on paper, maybe not really used to typing, then it's really be helpful for you to stick to the paper based, because you can make jottings on your paper. So if that's your vibe, then paper based might not be a bad option. The disadvantage of the paper based in contrast to the computer based is having to wait long period of time to be able to get your result. It takes about 3 weeks to be able to get your results, and if you're in a hurry, 3 weeks is such a long time. And also, you have to literally be counting the words by yourself in your writing part, and that is also really time consuming. So it's just basically up to you which one you want to do. But in my opinion, both of them don't necessarily determine how well you will pass or not. It's more of personal preference. And just a side note, so IELTS is actually valid for 2 years. So whatever you want to use it for, you have to make sure that you do the test within the validity of when you need it, because it will not make sense for you to do the test and then it expires and you still don't use it. It's just good to like have this in mind so you can be able to put things in perspective when you're planning other aspects of your life. And if you've learned one or two things from this video, please hit the subscribe button. Let's keep this family growing. And there's so much information I'll be sharing on this channel. It's mostly about medicine, but if you have some requests and I think I have the answer to it, I will definitely do a video about it. You can also follow me on my Instagram and my TikTok at Dr. Busola Deborah. I'll leave them on the screen. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Mwah. I don't really see it another I don't really see it another oof. English is hard, man. Talking about English, that's funny. Anyway,